Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we are on Ace of the Diamond, Act 2, episodes 26, 27, and 28. I'm so excited because last set of episodes, Sawamura, our sunshine boy, got to be unleashed. He's incomplete, but he's unleashed. He's able to be an amazing pitcher. He had some awesome moments last set of episodes, and we're facing MIMA and Hakuryu, and it's been a great game. I'm so excited to finally see our sunshine boy get to show off everything that he's learned up until this point throughout the entire 3 seasons we've seen him so far, and just do a really good job. And we've gotten other things with other team members. It's just been a great set of episodes. This whole season, we're at the halfway point officially of Act 3, and I don't want to think any more about that. So I'm just going to throw that out now. We're at the halfway point. Not going to think anything more about it. But I am going to say for next week's set of reactions, I did have my last note when I started out reacting to the series like nearly a year ago. Back in June of 2021, I started watching Ace of the Diamond. And about a year ago, I did make a note. Someone had told me that episode 29 in season 3 was a recap episode where they just recapped everything. So I'm assuming that between episodes 26 and 28, we're going to end the quarterfinals with Hakuryu. We're going to end that. So I'm like, okay. Or it's not quarterfinals. We're going to end the game with Hakuryu. They were a quarterfinalist. We're going to end that with them in this set of episodes. But I've been told episode 29 is a recap episode. So next week, I will probably watch episode 29 on my own time before recording, and then we'll do episodes 30, 31, and 32. And so the way that I figured it out is that by the end of this season, we will be down to 2 episodes for the last reaction, which will be episodes 51 and 52. However, I am going to, at that point, start reading the manga and catching up volume by volume with Act 2. So at that point, I've been told that Act 2, that the anime ends in the middle of a volume. And I was like, okay, so what we'll do is we'll just watch those 2 episodes and then we'll finish out the volume, right? And that'll be that week's reaction. So I'm pretty excited by that. That's the plan anyway. We'll go to from there because I'm already catching up with Seraph of the End and Yona the Dawn manga. Why not do Act 2 as well? Why not add a 3rd one on there? I like reading manga and I like talking about it with y'all, so why not do a 3rd one? What's stopping us? So that's the plan anyway. Before we move on to another sports anime, that's the plan. So yeah, but I'm really excited for these episodes. I wanted to watch them all week, and things with scheduling have not worked out, and so I'm finally sitting down. I'm a little close to the deadline for when it's going to come out on Patreon, but I'm sitting down and being like, you know what? I'm excited. I'm ready to watch it. Let's do this. So I hope y'all enjoy this reaction, but we're not going to waste any more time. I want to see how this game ends up ending. So far, it's been really good, and Sato's doing good, so I'm like, okay, can we hold out and beat Hakuryu, or are they going to come back and win? I think either way, if they win or lose, Sawamura's had a great game, and I hope that the reporters there in the press are going to finally recognize him as having potential alongside Furuya. We shall see. But we're not going to waste any more time. Let's do this, shall we? We're going to start episode 26 of Ace of the Diamond, Act 2, here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Where do we even start? Oh, you know what? I'm recording this on May 8th. It's my birthday as I'm recording this. And the moment that May 8th came up on episode 29, I was like, it was all meant to be. Taurus season. It is Taurus season indeed, because our boy Sawamura is shining. And I can't help but feel bad for Furuya. I really can't. We'll talk about Furuya in this because our boy. But I took an entire solid 2 columns of notes. I got the whole other page of notes too. I took so many notes on these episodes. I was like, what is happening? This show doesn't miss. It doesn't miss. It hasn't yet. It's so damn good. But man, we're going to talk about these episodes. I took a lot of notes on episode 26, but there's just a lot of stuff happening, right? Just a lot of things happening at this point. We're at the halfway point of the season, and we finished up these games. They beat Hakuryu, which was great. Sawamura had a great game. It was just wonderful. It was a great tournament for our boy. But we're going to talk about all of this. But man, I had to go refill my water. I had to pull up episode 27 because I want to talk about the journals, talk about the note for both Furuya and Sawamura. Oh my god. So yeah. So we started out actually episode 27 with Sakurai versus Sato and Ochiai recognizing Koshu. I said this in the reaction, but I honestly think Ochiai would be a good coach for Koshu because Koshu, he doesn't like fluff. He doesn't like false praise. He likes somebody that's just to the point and blunt, and that's Ochiai. So honestly, I could see Ochiai being a good coach for Koshu because it's exact opposite of his former coach, and it could show Koshu that he can get good, reliable advice about pitching and structure and technique from a source that's not going to just like give him false praise. Ochiai's not like that. So I do think Ochiai would be a good coach for Koshu, but man, when he said, oh, you could be the best catcher in Tokyo, I'm like, please don't tell him that. Because we're already dealing with, like, giving these kids these complexes. Furuya's got a complex because of you, Ochiai. Well, and because of other things, but Ochiai's part of it. And so I'm like, let's not. And Ochiai, I want to like him. Every time I get to the point where I'm like, Ochiai, I like you, he does, like, one little thing that I'm like, why you gotta be a toad? Like, why you gotta do this? So Ochiai's still so weird because he's like, even in these episodes, he's like, well, Kataoka, I still can't get in there with him. Kataoka's there at the heart. I'm like, Ochiai, you had the opportunity to get in there with him and you chickened out. You realized it was too much and you were like, I can't do this alone. I need Kataoka there. So I'm like, you say you want in, you say you want to be the head coach, but then when you get the opportunity, you back out. So I'm like, I think Kataoka and Ochiai work well together because they're so different. They form this battery as coaches where Ochiai can get into the more physical. Ochiai's strength is the technique. It is technique, and we'll talk about that with Furuya. It is technique, it is form, and he knows how to play to player strengths. He can easily, like a catcher would, he can pick out observations and details about players and be like, oh, you need to do this instead. Like what he did with Kuromochi and what he did with Sawamura and what he needs to be doing with Furuya. Like he can pick these things out. And so he's good at that. But as far as like the heart of the player and the heart of the game, that's where Kataoka kind of comes in. So they bounce off each other well. So I'm like, Ochiai, you and Kataoka need to work together. But I'm like, Ochiai, you had the chance to be the head coach and you didn't want it. So, but I'm just like, don't give Koshu, and I don't think Koshu would, I would like to think, I don't think Koshu would kind of get into this mentality that Furuya has because Koshu has been on such a team and has been an integral part of that team, and because Koshu is such a strategic player. Furuya is not strategic. He is not. He is simple. Furuya is like brute force, overpower, shonen protagonist. Like he's not. He really isn't. And Sawamura, as much as people give him grief for being this loud sunshine character, Sawamura thinks. He really does. He really thinks about what he has to do. And so I think that him just being loud is why people think that he's, isn't smart. But no, he is. Sawamura is smart. He's just, when it comes to baseball. But Furuya is very simple. So Furuya hears best pitcher in Japan is like, yes, I want to be that. Whereas I think if Koshu was told that, he would be like, okay, well, how do I become the best catcher in Japan? What do I need to do? That's the big difference. Koshu would think of, what are my steps? Furuya doesn't know to think that. So we'll talk about the whole everyday, that whole thing with Furuya. We're going to break all that down. Oh my gosh. But yeah. So 0-2 in the 7th inning. Yui, I like the idea that Yui's like, we're learning so much. Yui and Masashi are a great friendship because Yui it reminds me a lot of Furuya and Haruichi, to be honest. Yui reminds me a lot of Haruichi in a sense because he's like, we're learning so much. This is where he's very introspective and Haruichi is very introspective too, but they're like thinking behind the scenes. Furuya and Masashi, they just have flames and they're just like, let me play. Like that's all they're doing. And Masashi is a lot like Furuya. Masashi is like, just let me play. But we see in this game that Masashi's like struck out and had errors on the field. Like Masashi comes across as like being like, I want to be pro, better than my brother, gonna be the best. And he's like nowhere near there. He just has so much confidence in himself, which is really, I think, the big difference between him and Furuya. Masashi has all this overwhelming confidence, and even when he messes up, he just keeps pushing forward, which is what you should do. And Furuya gets inside of his own head and overthinks way too much when he messes up. It's like, dude, we'll talk about Furuya throughout this entire discussion because there's a lot to go over. But I love Sawamura getting inside his head and seeing how that idea of fun and disappointment, he's getting amped up. He's like, oh, and you kind of get the sense that Sawamura is feeling the same type of rush that Miyuki gets. Like, I feel like Sawamura can understand Miyuki now because Miyuki's like, oh, I love a challenge. I love when we're up against a tough opponent because that means we've got a chance to shine and we got to do good. And I feel like Sawamura, when he said there was that fun and disappointment, that it's kind of along the same lines of how Miyuki feels like, oh, this is a challenge. This isn't easy. We've got to work for it. Like, I feel like in that moment, Sawamura and Miyuki were on the same wavelength. And that's really, really cool. But him saying, I get this feeling of fulfillment. It's the greatest being on the mound, right? And he's like, I'm against a strong opponent. Like that's the cool thing. I love that we got that connection. And then there's 2 innings left. And he's like, 2 innings left. Nori's cheering him on. We don't see Furuya in that moment. We see Nori cheering him on. And he says that he wants the moment for himself. That he wants to stay on the mound. And that's really like one of the first times I think we really get Sawamura showing that little bit of greed, that he wants it. He's like, I've got a taste of the honey and now I want the whole beehive, the whole beehive. It's like, it's great. But I'm glad because I'm like, Sawamura usually isn't like that. We'll talk about the whole confidence and pride and humility and subservience and that line from Kataoka. I went back right before starting this and went back to that phrase and wrote it down. But I feel like in this moment, Sawamura is embodying those words from Kataoka, and we'll tie back to that when we get to it. But it's good. I don't want Sawamura to get cocky, but I don't think he does. I think he's just like, for once in his life, it's like he's got this confidence, and it's turning into pride. And it's okay. But they end up winning 3-1. And he pitched the whole game. I'm like, nobody makes a deal about it. I'm like, nobody makes a deal about Sawamura for, the second or third time pitching an entire 9-inning game by himself. Nobody else on Sato's done it. What? Just gonna not say anything? Nobody's gonna say a word? Okay. I was like, damn, he pitched all 9 innings by himself. Nobody's gonna walk. Wait, no, he didn't pitch 9 innings by himself. I'm an idiot. He did not. He replaced Furuya, didn't he? Yeah. No, he started against this. No, he did start this game against MIMA's team. He did pitch the whole 9 innings. Again, nobody calls this out. Nobody makes a big deal about it. How frustrating. MIMA's glare at Miyuki. At first I was like, why is MIMA glaring at Miyuki? But we'll get to that. That part, oh my God. It's Kosei 2.0, and it made me love MIMA 1,000 times over. But I love Ono, the pitcher from Hakuryu. Ono going up to Sawamura and wanting to shake his hand. That was so huge because normally Sawamura is like bringing up the rear, gathering all the players, being like, come on guys, let's shake their hands, let's line up. Like he's just like organizing everybody, and the other team doesn't care about him. But in this game, Sawamura earned the respect of like a national semifinalist team, semifinalist contender. He earned their respect, and their main pitcher wanted to shake Sawamura's hand, saying, we'll beat you next time. And Sawamura's like, sure, let's play. Like, that's so big. That's so awesome. I love Sawamura's attitude about it. I love that Ono was like, and Sawamura's like, we'll get that poker face to crumble. And I just want Ono to be like, I'm always like this. Like, Ono being like, I've got resting bitch face, what? But I love that moment of just the other team acknowledging Sawamura. Like, for that to happen, oh, it's huge. It's huge. And then the reporter, when they were like talking, I asked in the last reaction, I'm like, I want to know what the public is going to think about this game. And they start to question it. And the reporter, he's like, Eijun Sawamura, you do well to remember that name. It's like, yes, finally. Finally, after 3 damn seasons, how many 100 episodes, we finally get to this point. And I'm so happy. And so this moment with Furuya, they bookended. I'm glad that I watched these 3 episodes together. And it makes sense that the next episode is a recap before we get into like the whole number system and everything that may happen. It's good that the next episode's a recap. I get it, because this set of episodes felt like the midway point in the season. It felt like the midway point, and then we're going to take a break and then come back for the second half. It felt like it. I was like, oh yeah. But these episodes bookended so perfectly with having Furuya start out this episode here with the whole, well, now you can compete against me. And then Sawamura at the end, bookending it with the same right back at you. Like, it was just so perfect, right? Because in that moment, because Miyuki saying nice pitch, and, you know, like acknowledging Sawamura, but the way that he said it, he had to walk past Sawamura to say it. He didn't say it to his face. It was almost like an over the shoulder, like, hey, you did good. You know, that's what it came across as. And I know Furuya, the problem is, as we find out in episode 29, or 28, as we find out in the later episodes, is that Furuya comes across to a lot of his teammates as cold and maybe condescending, but he doesn't mean to be. That's the problem. He doesn't mean to be like that. It's just how Furuya is, and it comes across. It's kind of like when Tojo tells Kanemaru, he's like, you kind of come across condescending sometimes, and Kanemaru's like, wait, I do? Like, Furuya, I think Furuya in these episodes is realizing, is that what I sound like to everybody? It's like, oh, Furuya doesn't mean to be mean. It's just he's so introverted and quiet and kind of socially awkward that when he says things sometimes, it comes across that way. And so if you didn't know Furuya, that whole line about how he's like, well, nice pitching, might come across as being kind of like bitchy, but it's not. He didn't know what to say. And he's like, good, you know. And then Sawamura, of course, you know, Sawamura's like, well, I'm not satisfied. He's like, thanks, but I'm not satisfied. He's like, I let all these runners get to third. He's like thinking about what to do. He's like, I need to improve this and improve that. And then Furuya throws the line. He's like, well, good. Glad you're thinking about that. Now you can compete against me. Which is it's throwing some shade at Sawamura, but Sawamura brings it right back at the end and is like, when he has the injury, he goes, good, I'm not stopping. So rest up and get in good shape. I want you at your best when I overtake you to be the ace. And it's like, we'll come back to that. But yeah, that whole line there. And so, but then afterwards, we get into Furuya's head, and Furuya is just sitting there thinking the ace has to win. And a lot of what Furuya says I agree with. Like, yeah, the ace is someone that the team looks up to, and they are responsible for bringing the team together. Them and the captain bring the team together in a lot of ways. But then he says that the ace must overpower the opponent, and he talks about using brute force. And I'm like, the ace doesn't have to overpower and use brute force. That's what Furuya wants to do. That's Furuya's style. Furuya's style, it goes back to what Miyuki tells him. He's like, you have a power. Your talent is using brute force to overpower the enemy. That's Furuya's specialty. But the ace doesn't have to do that. Sawamura, I think, could very well be the ace. And his pitching style is not about overpowering. No, not at all. It's about strategy. Like his is having his is having a variety of options to use. We were talking in the Discord about what Furuya would be, because there's a spread of chapters where Furuya is called the monster pitcher. Furuya is the monster pitcher. Mukai is the trickster pitcher. Mei is the king pitcher, right? And so it's like Mei's the king, Furuya's the monster, Mukai is the trickster. And there was a fourth one in that page, and I can't remember who it was. They said Kosei, or Kosei's the genius. Yeah, Kosei's the genius, Mei is the king, Furuya monster, and Mukai is the trickster. And they were like, what would Sawamura be? And so we talked about it a lot. But one that I really liked was ninja. I was like, he's the ninja pitcher. And I know that relates to like Shoyo in Haikyuu a bit. But Shoyo and Sawamura are both similar-ish. Not really the same at all, but they're similar. But I like ninja for Sawamura because he has all these different options. He strategizes. He figures out what's the best play for the right moment, right? And he finds a way to make it work and make it fit. And like it's stealthy and it's cool. And so I was like, ninja kind of works for Sawamura. I like that one. I like that one a lot. Fits his personality. But yeah, so Sawamura not being satisfied yet. And we go back to the next game, which is against Hanazawa, and Nori pitches for most of it, and they win 8-6. And it said they were behind, and then they caught back up towards the end of it. And so then, in the midst of all this, we have Mima. So Mima goes up to Miyuki and asks him, like, do you have Line? Which is like a text message service in Japan. I'm pretty sure we were talking about it in the Discord too. Miyuki's like, huh? So Miyuki and Sawamura have both had moments where Kosei and Mima, these possible future pro players, have reached out to each of them. And Mima is a tsundere. He's a tsundere. He was just sitting there glaring like Koshu at Miyuki, being like, can I have your deets? just like, what? And Miyuki's like, huh? I'm 80? It's like Kosei. The only difference is that they won this game, so Miyuki was in a good mood. And I think Miyuki, if Kosei had asked the same thing, Miyuki would have been like, sure, I don't care. You know, Sawamura was just having a bad moment. I think if Kosei had caught Sawamura under better circumstances, he would have been all about talking to him. But Mima's just like, can I have your number? I love it. It's the best thing. The parallel of Kosei and Mima. I really like Mima after these set of episodes. Mima is great. He's a weirdo too. I love these characters that, like, they have an odd quirk. It's like, huh. It's like, we'll adopt you into our group. Come on. We're all friends here, right? That's so good. And then we'll go back to the whole thing with Miyuki. Oh my God. But I'm going to stick with my notes here. We're going to cut to Yakushi with our boys. Oh my God. With Tomobe. Tomobe, our hentai reading serious boy, is a southpaw pitcher. Of course he is. Of course he is. I love that. Maybe we'd found that out before, but it all makes all the more sense why he has a rivalry with Akamatsu. It makes so much more sense why him and Shinji Akamatsu have a rivalry, because they're pitchers. They're rival pitchers. Makes sense. He uses southpaw with a slider, so he's kind of like a southpaw like Sawamura, but uses like a slider like Nori. That's really interesting, and he's proving himself as a first year. And of course, Sanada is graduating, so they need another pitcher to come in. Makes sense. I mean, they got Raichi, and they have their other players that can function as both pitchers and catchers, but they need an up-and-coming just sole pitcher, and Raichi's too chaotic. They need somebody grounded. And Tomobe seems like he could be like a Sanada in training. Like, he could be grounded like Sanada. But I love that Coach Todoroki is worried about Raichi. He's like, all these girls are starting to notice him. I love it. He's like, he's just more erratic than usual. These girls are noticing him in class. These hoes need to get away from my son. How is he going to marry Sanada if he's getting hit on by these girls? He doesn't know how to function in social settings. It's so great. He's like, I wish Sanada was my son. I was like, it is all but confirmed that I think Coach Todoroki would welcome Sanada with open arms into the Todoroki family, being like, I don't care if my son marries you. Let's do this now. Like, I think I'm fully convinced that he would be all about Sanada joining the Todoroki family. Absolutely. But it's also interesting, and I want to point out that I'm really glad that, and this is going to sound odd, but I'm really glad that Coach Todoroki, when they established that he doesn't like to drink, because it's a weird trope that's in a lot of stories that Coach Todoroki, the way that Raizo comes off as, when we first met him, I'm going to be honest, when we first met him as a character, he was like, outside, out in like under the bridge with the boys playing baseball. And it kind of was established that he was playing like with the adult leagues, but he like didn't really have a stable job necessarily. He was doing it all for the money. He came across, when you first met him in the series, kind of sleazy and I don't think that about him. He's like one of my favorite characters and like maybe my favorite coach outside of Kataoka. But I really like him as a character, but when you first meet him, I kind of thought that maybe he was kind of like a bum. And so my first impressions of Coach Todoroki was that he was kind of like a bum, and like his wife, like, here's your kid, bye, and then left the situation, and maybe he was just trying to like raise Raichi and find a stable job. And just in stories that are not Ace of the Diamond, but I've read stories where characters like Coach Todoroki would be kind of like an alcoholic or something like that and just be like down on their luck and kind of like not the best dad. But I'm so happy that Ace of the Diamond did not go that route, and they show us that Coach Todoroki is a good coach, is a strategist, is just super laid back, but is wanting a better future for his son than him, is actively working to get that future accomplished, and is not an alcoholic bum. Like, he's actually a really good person. He just is super laid back. And even though now the more that we see him in the series, the more we see him kind of get tense now that there's a little bit more pressure, and he's seeing the pressure from other from other high schools and other institutions, like trying to get to their program. And he's like, oh God, I don't like all this politics. I don't like this politics and going to these parties. I don't like any of this, right? But I'm so glad that this story took a different route and made Todoroki go against like what my original impressions or expectations of him were, and completely shattered them. Like, that makes me so happy. And not that there's anything wrong with drinking at all, or anything wrong with not drinking. You do you. But I like that his character doesn't fall into what I assumed was going to be a trope with him, and it's not like that at all. I'm very happy with that. That makes me very, very happy. But yeah, I like that he's worried about Sanada doing too much, and Sanada's like, no, I'm just warming up, it's fine, I'm just gonna put some pressure on him from the bullpen, it's cool, I got this. Like, and then of course Todoroki's like, he's such an agreeable ace, I wish you were my son, join the Todoroki family. It's just he doesn't put on airs, right? Sanada does not put on airs, and neither does Coach Todoroki, and I love them for it. Yakushi is like my favorite rival team. Outside of Sato, Yakushi's my favorite team. Inashiro gives them a good run for their money. And then, not Umemiya, but Ugamori does too. But Yakushi is my jam. I would watch a whole series just on that team. I would. So yeah. So we go back to Furuya. And in the next game, like, we cut through the invitational tournament. Like, we cut through the next several games very quickly. But Furuya, he has a good start, but he starts to lose control towards the third inning. And they establish the team starts to get tense when Furuya takes the mound. Like, the team starts to get a little tense. Like, they start to get under pressure because they know that Furuya's like a loose cannon. It's either going to go really great or he's going to have a really off day. And that would create pressure and tension with the team. If they don't feel relaxed around you as the ace, then lots of errors can happen when they may, under normal circumstances, not happen. And Furuya, he's just thinking this is the responsibility of the ace. I really think, we'll talk about Furuya's deal, and Ochiai, I think Ochiai hits it on the head, surprisingly, what the issue is. But he's just like, this is my responsibility as the ace. I've got to do this. And so we have another game right after that. They end up, Sawamura ends up coming in for him. And I love that we've established in this series that Sawamura and Yui are not the best battery. They just aren't in sync, right? And I love that moment when Sawamura, he's like, they call a timeout because he's not taking any of Yui's pitches, and Yui's like, what's wrong? And Sawamura's like, we need to take a deep breath. We need to go. And he like makes him take a deep breath with him. And I don't know if that was Sawamura like easing off tension, and just him, if it was just Sawamura easing off tension, or if it was him trying to get him and Yui in sync with one another, or if Sawamura thought that Yui was too tense and was trying to get Yui to calm down. That would be interesting if Sawamura was trying to get Yui to calm down, and this was like his nonchalant, like, nice way of doing that, being like, oh, let's take some deep breaths together, and Yui's like, okay, I'm a first year, we'll do that. That would be cool if that was the case. But it ends up working, they win 2-11, so there you go. And so then we have even more games with Kataoka and Nori starting. We'll talk about them. It was a 6-0 win. Masashi trying, but having the field errors. That's the thing. They've established that Masashi wants to do so well. He's just not there yet. It's really funny. And I like the idea that Sato is just running all these pitcher batteries through. Like, we're trying all these different batteries. We're seeing what works. We're seeing who flows together, who is compatible with each other. And that's important because going into the summer tournaments and figuring out the numbers of everyone, you want to figure out, okay, of our top 20, who's going to make the grade, right? And then Kawashima being essential, like we have Kawashima and Kaneda being there with Nori and Furuya and Sawamura. Now, if Furuya's out for 2 weeks, we got 4 pitchers at least, so that's good. And then we cut back to the whole thing with MIMA. They're on the bus, and I wanted to pull up the screenshot. I did take a screenshot of this, and I wanted to pull it up. In the moment, I didn't have time to write all this down, and so I wanted to look up these numbers. So we get these statistics. I do feel sad that Miyuki, Sawamura, Furuya, and Nori all sit in separate seats by themselves. We don't see them sitting with people. I was like, my shipper heart was like, oh, you're not going to have one of them with another, but what do we do? I like that Furuya and Nori take the outer seats and Sawamura and Miyuki take the inner seats. That's why they had to be in separate seats. They wouldn't settle for who got the window seat. So, you know. But we see here, we have our stats. And I'll pull it up here so y'all can see. But we have Furuya, Sawamura, Kawakami, Kaneda, and Kawashima as our pitchers. And there's GP, IP, H, SO, BB, and ERs. I'm assuming ERs means errors. I'm assuming SO means strikeouts. H probably means hits. And then IP means innings played, perhaps. And GP means ground plays, maybe. The only one I'm not entirely sure is BB. I guess that's like batters on base or balls, or maybe I don't think it's walks. Well, I don't know. It's BB where I'm curious. So as far as like, or games played, GP is games played. So Kawashima played 3 games and the others played 2 games. Okay. Innings played. Furuya played 14 innings. Sawamura did 11. Kawakami did 15. And then Kaneda did 6 2/3. And Kawashima did 7 1/3. So interesting. So Nori and Furuya played the most. Out of hits, Sawamura did get 10 hits off there, which was just 1 under Nori. And Furuya only got 8 hits. But strikeouts, Furuya got 19 strikeouts, which was good, right? And then Sawamura got 8. I don't know if SO means strikeouts. I feel like Sawamura got more than that, but I'm not sure. And then BB and errors, Sawamura made the least errors. So if that's what ER means. I don't know. You all in the comments will probably tell me what this chart means. I'm just guessing at it, but that's interesting. That's interesting that's Nori and Furuya played the most innings possibly. Okay. So yeah, we had that chart there. And then we cut back to MIMA. And MIMA sent Miyuki the email that said, "See you at Koshin." It's like, man, Miyuki, Mr. Popular, Mr. Pretty Boy Catcher. Now he not only has May, his ex, now he has, which MIMA's not a pitcher, he's a batter. Miyuki's just getting everybody on board with him, right? And then it's interesting. But yeah, Miyuki says, "Oh, I don't have a smartphone. I just have like a feature phone," which I'm assuming means he just does texts and calls. Like it's a very simple phone. It's nothing, just text, email, and call. That's all it does. Nothing fancy, right? Maybe get some pictures in. And I love that MIMA tries to like make an excuse for it. MIMA's like, "Oh yeah, you don't do this whole digital age. You want to soak in all the information. You don't want the digital era to distract you." And Miyuki's like, "No." He's like, I like to think that Miyuki and his dad's probably this old school guy that like just works in a steel mill. So his dad, like my dad has a flip phone, right? Because he just like, where he works at and stuff, he's like, "I just need a flip phone. I don't need to do anything fancy. I just need to call and text you." So my dad is very old school as far as that goes. And I feel like Miyuki's dad's the same way. And sometimes when your parents are like a certain way, you kind of follow suit. And so I feel like Miyuki's like, "Well, my dad just had this flip phone. He doesn't need anything fancy, so I'm kind of the same way." Miyuki seems kind of like an older soul. He's way more mature for his age than, you know, a 16 or 17-year-old. He's 17 going on 40. So that's the real reason, but MIMA thinks that there's some deep philosophical reason why he doesn't have a digital smartphone, and Miyuki's like, So, but they traded emails, but I'm sorry, I was in the middle of a drink, and I nearly spit it out onto the desk here, when Miyuki's like, because MIMA's like, "How many schools have contacted you?" And Miyuki's like, "I don't know." And Miyuki is surprisingly humble about the whole going pro thing. Miyuki is very different from May, in that May and Miyuki are similar trickster characters, but May, I feel, would be like, "Yes, I've been offered these pro sponsorships. These are my teams that are considering me. I'm going to Harada's school." Like, I could just see it, right? But Miyuki is surprisingly humble. He is very humble about it. And it could be that Miyuki doesn't know what he wants to do or where he wants to go. He's not sure yet. He's not thought ahead that far. That could be it. And Miyuki is a type of character that he's kind of very private and guarded. He doesn't give a lot of information about himself away to people. So when Zono's like asking him all these personal questions, he's like, "I don't know." You know, he doesn't want to talk about his personal life, right? That's just not how Miyuki is. He's a very private person. Or that's how his character's been built up. So it's just hilarious when Mima's like, "So how many schools are considering you?" And he's like, "Well, I've got 4, but I probably should round it up." So I thought he was going to say like 5 to make it a nice even number. 5 or 6, and he's like 10. Just, what a troll. What an absolute troll. And Mima's like, 10 schools? What? I'm going to talk to you all summer. It's like, oh my God, Miyuki. I can't. I cannot. But I love it. Miyuki has a lot going on right now. And Miyuki's like, why me? All these competitive types surrounding me. I'm like, geez, I can't imagine, Miyuki. Why? He's such a magnet, right? But he loves the challenge, our boy. Oh, buddy. But yeah, Sato ends up getting out of the tournament, winning every single game. Good for our powerhouse school. Back to powerhouse status. Well, Zono brings up a good point about that, though. We'll talk about it. So that was only episode 26. That was one episode. I've talked for 30 minutes about one episode. It's insanity. So episode 27, Asada does the tire run. And I love it. I love that he's trying to do the tire run to be like Sawamura. He's like, if I can do it, I'll be like Sawamura. It's fine. I want to do like he did. And our second string, they had 4 wins and 1 loss, which was cool. They did really good. Sawamura got high praise. Like, he was in the paper finally. People were saying it's like Sato's golden age. It's great. Like, the pitcher relay that they can do. And Sawamura's still not satisfied. And I love that Kataoka, he says, I can't wait to see him pitch again. It's like, good. Sawamura getting some recognition. Finally. You almost feel bad for it, right? You almost feel bad rooting for Sawamura. You're like, well, our dude's finally getting some praise. I kind of feel bad. We've been so conditioned. It's like Pavlov's dog, just conditioned to feel bad for our boy. So when he finally gets recognition, it's like, ugh. But then they talk about Furuya. Ochiai asking, how is Furuya? Because everybody's kind of ignoring the subject. They're avoiding the subject of Furuya until Ochiai brings it up. And Miyuki's like, he's just the same. And I think Ochiai nails it on the head. I really do. I think Ochiai's like, the pressure of being the ace has gotten to Furuya. It's just too much. It's too much. And I think it honestly is. I think that him and Kataoka says that Furuya has tunnel vision, and he needs a plan. He needs to go back to the basics. That has been the big deal about him and Sawamura having such a difference, because back in season 1, Sawamura and Furuya were these 2 wild cannons coming into the series at the start of this. Like, Sawamura had been on a team, he'd been the captain and the ace of middle school, but his team wasn't good. They weren't good. He just knew about teamwork, knew about the power of it, knew about how to play with team dynamics, but his middle school team wasn't we're just, we're just having fun. But he was the ace, and he was the captain, and he liked it. And so when he came to Sato, he thought that he just walk in and do the same thing he'd done in middle school. And so, because he was so vocal about it, he was so vocal about wanting to become the ace and about how he had all these expectations that Kataoka and Chris Senpai and Miyuki then were like, whoa, you need to start back at square one. Here's some foundational basics you need to know. And they set Sawamura up with steps 1, 2, and 3 through however many steps they've set up for this boy, and said, you've got to get your foundation, learn to walk before you can run, and build yourself up for something. And they had to revisit that when he got the yips in season 2. And so the Sawamura, to his benefit, has struggled so much in this series, but he's had something to work on. He's had basic goals that day to day he can work on to get better. And when Furuya started, he had all this raw talent and all this brute force, and brute force can get you far. It can get you very far, but it will only get you so far if you don't have finesse and strategy and stuff to back it up. And I think the problem is that Furuya's not had that basic foundation laid out for him. Like, Miyuki has told him what to do, and he's given him notes, but Miyuki's communication is not like Chris Senpai's communication, right? Chris Senpai, did a whole thing with Sawamura. He did, a whole series of a host of things. And Chris Senpai can communicate. Miyuki, that's where his struggle has been. And he's come a long way becoming captain. It's helped him so much. But Furuya needs somebody to do a Chris Senpai move and sit down with him and say, okay, here's what you need to do. And you need to do X, Y, and Z and start like Sawamura, get the fundamentals down, and then just build your way back up. And there's steps that Kataoka does through these episodes that kind of lead to that and help. but there needs to be more. Like I wrote in my notes, speak to him, please. Like I wrote that, speak to him, please, and underlined it. I'm like, Kataoka needs to sit down with Furuya. They need to just sit down, because I think there's just wires crossed. And Furuya, like when Ono has that conversation with Furuya, and Furuya's like, oh, I don't think that. It's like, oh, because the team thinks one thing and Furuya thinks something else. They need to have, Miyuki needs to have that sit down, Kataoka needs to have a sit down. They just need to speak with Furuya. Like writing it in the journal, leaving the note is one thing. But the problem is if they don't sit down and talk him through that note, then you're just leaving Furuya up to determine, for him to interpret it himself. And will Furuya interpret it the right way? That's my concern with Furuya, is will he interpret it the proper way? And so I like Kataoka saying, okay, I'll focus on the mental stability, right? And Ochiai, I like that Ochiai is like, I'm going to focus on the training and the form, which now that we've got this thing from the doctor, I think Ochiai hopefully will kick it in gear and be like, okay, let's focus on this, shall we? Like, I'm hoping so, but I do agree with Ochiai in that he says we have a lot of really good players. That's a good problem to have. Because it is, yeah. It's better that you have a whole roster, a plethora of great players to pick from, than to be scrambling and desperate to find players. Because that's where we were at season 1. And that kind of, I mean, Furuya was the best choice to be the ace in season 1, leading into season 2. He was the best choice, I think, of the pitchers at the time. Because Sawamura still had some growing to do. But Sawamura has grown. And so now, I don't think that Furuya is the best choice to be the ace anymore. I think that he needs to have that pressure taken off of him. I think Sawamura needs to become the ace, and Furuya needs to step back and get his foundation lined out, right? I think Furuya needs to step back and let that happen. I think that it's too much pressure on him. He's not being able to communicate with the team like he should, and it's just he's getting in his own head too much. He just needs to step back and be on the team, get his batting to where he can be a part of the cleanup, and just let Sawamura be the ace. And not let him be the ace, but get his priorities in line. Like, figure things out. I think Furuya's not in the best place. And I don't want Furuya to implode. I want Furuya to be good. I feel for Furuya in these episodes. I'm heartbroken for him because I'm like, I want him to get it. But then at the same time, you feel bad for Furuya, but you're elated for Sawamura. And it's like, man, what a reversal, right? So, yeah. It's so funny because, yeah, we have good players, and that's a good problem to have. And then we go back to the room, and Ono is like, he's like, you're trying to take all this responsibility on yourself, and it makes it seem like you don't trust us third years. He's like, I know you want Miyuki to catch for you, and I know you don't think I can catch your balls. He's like, but I can. You need to rely on your third years more. And Furuya's like, oh, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. And he like bows to him, and Yui's like... So yeah, they just don't understand what's going on in Furuya's head. And Furuya's not a good communicator, so it makes it harder to even understand him. Whereas Sawamura is a good communicator, almost to the point of communicating too much. And so, I don't know. I just feel like Sawamura is in a good place to be the ace and needs that experience as the ace, and Furuya needs to step back and just get everything realigned, right? But we cut to the next day where Sawamura, he's got all the confidence with the girls, and Kanemaru and Furuya are just sitting there like... And I love the girls are like, this is kind of creepy. Like, you're happy, but what's up with this radiant smile? We don't like this, right? And so... And then we cut to Koshi wanting to watch the tape with Sawamura. Of course. And I'm like, and now Koshi is even more convinced he has to be on the first string before he can pitch to Sawamura, before he can catch Sawamura's pitches. It's like, Koshu, honey. But we did notice Nori had some concern with Furuya. There was a few times in episode 27 where Nori was concerned, like he was thinking about Furuya, and Nori's been put in charge of the pitchers because he's got seniority. So if Kataoka doesn't talk to him, if Miyuki doesn't talk to him, Nori talking to him, I think would be a really good thing, because Nori understands. Nori's never been the ace, but Nori understands the importance of being a good pitcher and having those fundamentals and being there as support, whether you start the game or you end the game or you don't play at all. So I feel like Nori needs to talk to Furuya, and that may be the most beneficial thing that happens, is that Nori can give him some advice. We'll see, right? We shall see. But yeah, Koshu, the one thing about when they watch the tape together, I put my notes here, that Koshu just talking freely with Sawamura. I think that when Miyuki retires, when he leaves Sato, Koshu will be a good catcher with Sawamura. Yui and Sawamura are just not compatible. Yui either overthinks things or just him and Sawamura are not on the same wavelength. But Koshu being so open in his communication, being like, yeah, you did this wrong, you need to fix this. And Sawamura's like, you're my underclassman, but okay. I agree. Like, I think Sawamura and Koshu will get along great as a battery because they're able so freely to communicate with one another. And Yohei and Asada kind of noticed that. They're like, man, Koshu's just letting Sawamura have it, and he's okay with it. It's like, yeah, Koshu is similar to Miyuki in that he can be blunt and just speak the hard truths, whether you want to hear it or not. And he's able to communicate very effectively, which Sawamura needs. So I liked that a lot. But yeah, Furuya not realizing that that's how things looked with Ono. Kataoka handing back the journals. So I wanted to go through this scene. I pulled it up here. I turned the sound off. But I wanted to go through this scene where he hands back the journals. Because there's things written on them. And I wanted to note. He said, I've written my comments about the Golden Week games. As he's handing it back. So, okay. So we have Kingo Kawashima. Power pitching. Okay, they all had little labels. So power pitching. Kingo Kawashima. Okay. Interesting. And then we have Tadahiro Kaneda. Tadahiro. And he doesn't have anything on his. And then we have Endurance. Norifumi. Oh, his name is Norifumi Kawakami. So, okay, that's why they just call him Nori. Norifumi. And it says Endurance. That's the thing. I think that Nori needs to talk to Furuya because he's all about endurance, like having perseverance. And I feel like he needs to talk to Furuya. He really does. He says, as the oldest pitcher, you're the leader of the pitching staff. It's like, yeah, Nori, I love it. I love how much the manager got so excited during the one game where he was like, yeah, Nori. It's like, oh, I love that he gets so enthusiastic. Asian Sawamura, legend. Of course. Maybe that would be his pitcher title, is legend. Maybe. I don't know, instead of ninja. I love that Kataoka's like, your writing needs improvement. But here's the thing. As an English teacher, I totally understand what Kataoka did, right? Because it's like you have a student that has lots of potential and they maybe try to cut corners or sneak around the edges and you want to encourage them. And so I love that he's like, don't write bigger because no one will notice. Yeah, that's another thing too. Like, your teachers are going to know. And Summer's like, ugh. He's like, you've got to get good grades. No matter how well you pitch in a game, there are no spots on the roster for students with bad grades. So he's like, so many complaints. And then he says, I'm planning to start you against Naruto Industrial this weekend. Make sure you're ready. And I love that all the first years are looking at him. They're a powerhouse school from Chiba. Right after Hakuryu game. Yeah, I love that everybody's looking over at him. If he can pull it off, he'd effectively be our ace. So everybody on the team is getting around the idea that Sawamura could be the ace. Like, they're getting around the idea that, yeah, if he can pull off a good game. I'm like, don't scare us like this. Give us a good game with Sawamura, please. We'll talk about that with Furuya here when we get to episode 29 or 28. I'm getting ahead of myself. And I love that Nabe and Miyuki are like, all right, Sawamura. And then Sawamura does the Meowchi where he's like, just exhales. And they said, Furuya, read this carefully and think about it. And he's like, oh, okay. Everybody's like, And then he's like, Sawamura style, Golden Week work. Goal is near, maintain focus, don't make a ruckus in the train. Weak point, Golden Week. He's like, is this a joke? I have no time for playing around. Oh my god. Sawamura's like, he didn't like it. It's like he tried to make a joke to make it better, and Kataoka's like, I'm not having it. But then we have the note that he says, right? Then we have the note. Yeah, I love this. It seems you aren't satisfied with how the Hakuryu game went. I was so emotional. This was just, they are a powerhouse team with one of the best running games in the country. In my mind, it was neither luck nor a fluke that led us to victory. It was you who has never given up on becoming the ace. Yeah, that perseverance, like step at a time. You kept walking step by step. Oh, man. And that put the result in our favor. Like, you've not given up. You've done things exactly like you should have. And when he stands up, above confidence lies pride. And below humility lies subservience. I want you to keep your feet on solid ground and keep walking forward. I'm looking forward to your next start. That's going to be the thumbnail, is him standing up and looking at Kataoka like, you do believe in me and you are acknowledging me. Like, yeah, like you did notice, you did remember. Because that was his big thing during episode 15, was he didn't think that, he thought he'd been forgotten, that he wasn't even considered an option as a pitcher. And so that's why he was so surprised when they saved the day. But here, he didn't forget that Sawamura's always wanted to be the ace. And he's like, you've got to earn that spot. And you're just keep moving forward and you'll get there. It's like, But I love that line. Above confidence lies pride. Like when you have confidence in something and you go beyond that, it turns into pride. And that's where, back in episode 26, that's where Sawamura has gotten to when he was talking about the fun with disappointment. He was like, I'm so happy. He's like, I'm so excited, like facing this team. He's like, when I'm on the mound, I'm proving myself. I'm being fulfilled. I'm confident, and that confidence turns into pride. And then he says, below humility lies subservience, which means you're giving into orders, you're following along, you're not having this agency. So, like, humility is good, but below that is subservience. Like, it's good to be humble about things, but if you don't have any confidence in yourself and you don't have any pride in what you do, then you're just going to follow orders and you're just going to be just a cog. Like, you're not going to stand out and be able to rise above to be at the next level. And so I love that. But that journal entry, and then, God, there's that, and Sawamura just being excited. And then he cuts back. He's like, now that you have visible improvement, you have to find some solid ground and walk. And it's just an extension of that, step by step. That's how you've come this far, after all. Like, it's just like, you know what to do. And he, like, lifts up his head to hold back tears. He's, like, keeping himself from crying. And then he just gets super excited and he just starts laughing. It's like, I've been away from my home ground for so long. I'm going to go tear things up. And they're like, shut up. Don't start shouting. But when he walks away, you see his eyes are red. You see his eyes are red like he's been crying. And it's like, ah! So then you juxtapose that with Furuya. And this note from Kataoka to Furuya, whew, it is something. Yeah, that note to Furuya, I believe not letting you start in the Hakuryu game was the right decision. Saying, and Furuya's like, oh, although we won both games, their substance was far from ideal. Meaning that we didn't do as good as we could have done. Pitching with strength alone, walking too many batters, becoming intimidated when there are runners on base. I have trouble seeing you as the pitcher that you want to be. He's like, you want to be in the best in Japan, but that performance isn't going to cut it. He's like, oh, what kind of pitcher do you think the best in Japan is? He's like, what do you envision? Yeah, players who achieved great careers did not get there overnight. Their performances day after day over time led to their great careers. What do you need to achieve the same? What should you be doing each and every day? I'd like you to consider those questions. And they like call him over. Oh. And then it says, yeah, Furuya Satoru. Yeah. And we see Sawamura crying as he's like walking away, so excited. So, but the thing of it is, the thing why I feel bad about Furuya a little bit is that in going back to that whole thing with the double standard in episode 15, is that some of Furuya's problems have kind of been made by Kataoka and Ochiai. They have been, right? They talk about, they're like, what do you think you should do? But I'm like, Sawamura's had that, he's had people telling him step by step what you should do. And he's put that into practice over the last 2 seasons to get to this point. And Furuya, he just was kind of riding on his laurels and riding on this raw talent. But he never had that talk like Sawamura had with Kataoka. There was never that talk. Ochiai was like, you could become the best in Japan, you know? But no one really sat down with Furuya to have the same conversation. So now they're having it with Furuya. Now they're having that conversation that Sawamura had back in season 1. But there's a part of me that feels like a lot of Furuya's problems have been kind of nurtured by his experience on Sato leading up to this point. And part of it is Furuya's whole deal. But part of it, I'm glad Kataoka is calling him out and telling him what he needs to be thinking about. I just want to see them do more with Furuya because I think Furuya needs more. I think that they assume that it's like when you assume that somebody's quiet, sometimes people are like, oh, that person's quiet, they're probably really smart. That's not always the case. Or they're quiet, they got it all put together, but until you talk to that person, you really don't know for sure. So I just feel like they need to talk to Furuya more. There needs to be more communication with Furuya from other people like Ono, from Nori, from Kataoka, from Ochiai. Like, they need to talk with him more. And it's just not exactly happening yet to the extent that it's happened with Sawamura. So hopefully, especially now that we know that Furuya needs some more one-on-one attention, that will happen in the future. But what a different, the difference that those notes made between those two characters is crazy. Like, the difference that one piece of writing can have on both of them, it's something, right? It's crazy. What should you do every day? And Furuya practices every day. He does do things every day, but he's not thinking on the same level as Sawamura as, okay, what do I need to focus on today? What is this? All Furuya is thinking about is, I need to pitch. I need to keep pitching. I need to have brute strength. But to Furuya's defense, it's kind of what they've been telling him the whole time. Like, Miyuki back in season 1 was like, you got raw talent, you got brute strength, you just need to focus on that. I'm like, ugh. And I know that's not all, but there's a big part of this, and I'm like, they've really told Furuya that his big strength is his brute force and overpowering the enemy, the other team, the opposition. I think a lot of it is, it's not just Furuya and it's not just Sato, but there's equal parts of the issues. And I just don't want Furuya to implode. I want him to be a strong pitcher and to be a strong rival for Sawamura. And we'll talk about that in episode 29. 28! I keep wanting to say episode 29 because I know it's a filler episode. But episode 28. But we're not there yet. So we have Tojo pitching to Kanemaru, and Sawamura does the hey, hey, hey. And if you watch Haikyuu, it's hilarious because Sawamura's voice actor plays Akashi, who is the setter for Bokudo, who always does the hey, hey, hey in Haikyuu. So it's funny that you have that kind of reversal there. It's great. I never thought I'd hear Akashi's VA saying the hey, hey, hey line. It's great. But yeah, Kanemaru being an aggressive batter like Higasa. Ochiai makes the comparison of him and Higasa, that he's an aggressive batter. And Tojo's like, well, you can hit fastballs, but that's it. It's like, And then Nori being a leader, saying that, and I like that Nori says playing in the game is not enough. Again, I want Nori to talk to Furuya so badly because Nori hits so many things on the head that I think Furuya needs to hear. Nori's like, it's not just playing in the game and being on the mound the most. It's what do you do when you're not on the mound. It's being supportive. It's playing in the outfield. It's practicing this and that. I just need Nori to talk to Furuya. I really think Nori as the senior pitcher needs to do that. And then Kanemaru and Harumi have that kind of spar, that little spat between each other. I'm like, they just really don't get along great, and I want them to make up and be friends. I just don't know how that's going to happen yet, but I feel bad that Harumi and Kanemaru have kind of this, quarrel between them. And then Zono at the dinner table asks Miyuki, where do you want to go? And honestly, here's the thing. They all think Miyuki's lying and just doesn't want to tell because Miyuki's like, I'm just thinking about nationals and Koshin in the summer. I can worry about that stuff later. I don't think that Miyuki's lying. I really don't think Miyuki knows what he wants to do yet because I think Miyuki's so sad at the prospect that he's leaving this team that he doesn't want to think about the future yet. He's like, I'll just have my offers on the table and ride things out after nationals. I really don't think that Miyuki knows where he wants to go. He's just going to wait and see what happens after national tournaments, and he doesn't want to think about it at the moment. And that's really sad, but I don't think there's any ulterior motive. I think that at the end of the day, Miyuki, because he's been avoiding that question quite a bit with everybody, like with the offers and all that, so I think Miyuki doesn't really know what he wants to do after high school, and he doesn't want to think about it. So, and I don't blame him, right? But that at the end when they had the title drop and it was the note, and it was both Furuya and Sawamura saying it, it was like, okay. That's well played, because that note affected both of them so differently. And so then we have episode 28, May 8th, birthday at 4:20 a.m. I know somebody was probably like, but yeah, Sawamura and Furuya both up early for very different reasons. Sawamura pumped up on adrenaline because he's so excited by the note. Furuya wondering what to do. And I love that Furuya writes in the notebook because he's trying to think of, what do I need to do every day? And he says, a consistent pitcher the team can rely on. And that is good. That is a good thing. I'm glad that Furuya is thinking, but Furuya thinks in such broad terms, right? Furuya thinks in such broad terms, and Sawamura has been trained by Chris Senpai and others to be very specific on what do I need to do. What do I need to learn this breaking ball? Do I need to do my core strength? What do I need to do? And Sawamura has always been about form, like Chris Senpai was, and it makes sense because Chris had the injury and was like, you need to strengthen your core, you need to do these things so that you don't have an injury too. Funny that. I'm like, Chris should have been talking with Furuya this whole time, but he wasn't, right? So, because yeah, it is, you do need to be a consistent pitcher that the team can rely on. Yes, but that's such a broad term. I feel like Furuya needs to even get more specific than that. He needs to be like, okay, well, how do I become a consistent, reliable pitcher? What do I need to do to get to that point? I think that Furuya has good ideas, overall general ideas of how to become this good pitcher, but he needs to break it down on an even more micro level. Like, what do I need to do to get to that point, right? And Kuromochi is worried about him. Kuromochi's like, Furuya, I'm worried about him. He needs to get in shape. And Miyuki will tie back to him at the end of this episode. Miyuki's like, no, it's fine. He's got this. And we'll talk about trust. And we'll talk about trust and how Furuya and Sawamura both view their trust in Furuya a little bit differently. But yeah. So I love that Sawamura, and they say Sawamura is seizing the moment of Furuya's downfall. That is the one thing about this in this episode, is that when we found out that Furuya has a potential injury, I'm like, I want Sawamura to beat Furuya at the top of his game. That's what I want. I don't want Sawamura to get the ace ship because Furuya's injured. I don't want it to be like he slides into the ace ship because of circumstance, right? I don't want that. It's funny because it would kind of be a parallel because Tamba got injured and Furuya kind of slid into the ace ship from Tamba through the same thing. So it's kind of karma, it's sort of a karma thing where Furuya took the ace ship from Tamba because of an injury. And then if Sawamura, but I don't want Sawamura to do the same thing and take the ace ship just because Furuya was injured. I don't want that. I feel like that's a cheap cop-out move. I'm like, come on, Terajima, just let Sawamura be the better overall ace, and that's the reason why. Let him beat him on strength and strategy. And I think he honestly could at this point with where Furuya's at. But Koshu still denying Sawamura. I was like, after watching that game, I'm sure Koshu's like, I have to be in first string to catch for you. I love the Sawamura was like, I just want to practice with you. And he's like, no. And so then it's him and Yui. But Furuya, I love that Sawamura tries not to fall asleep in class, but it's fine. Both him and Furuya are asleep. So if both of them are getting bad grades, it's on both of them. I love Kanemaru. Kanemaru is like, you guys are going to be in trouble. It's like, and then Furuya was doing really good. But Ochiai says he can't read him, which is interesting because Ochiai is usually a very good judge of character. Usually, and him saying he can't get a read on Furuya, that's interesting. Like, okay, he's like, I don't know what this kid's thinking, and that's a problem. And so Miyuki wants to play. He's like, he wants to play. Miyuki played Furuya like Sawamura. I have my notes. Miyuki played F like Sawamura. Yeah, it's because when he kind of goaded Furuya into the pitch they needed to hit, and so he did the exact same thing to Furuya as he did to Sawamura. It's great. But then Furuya asking Ono to practice. I'm proud of Furuya for the little steps that he's taking, like asking Ono to catch for him. That's a big deal to Furuya, and it shows that he's taking Miyuki's words to heart. And then when Yui asks to come watch too, Furuya's like, well, yeah, if you just want to stand there and watch, I guess. I'm like, that's a pretty big step for Furuya. I feel like after that talk with Ono, Furuya felt a little bit more respect for him. And I'm like, good deal, right? I'm glad. And I'm glad that Ono wants to work with Furuya. That's really good. And then Miyuki's like, you're just mad at me because I hit your pitch. And he's like, no, I'm not. It's like, he kind of is. But still, Ochiai and Yui are going to go watch, which is good. And so then Zono being so on point with this, and it's such the craziest thing, but he brings up such a good point. He was like, he's like, weren't we the team that was known for our offensive batting skills? It's like, yeah. Season 1, the whole problem was that Sato didn't have a good relay of pitchers. Pitching was their weak point. They had an amazing offense with their batters, and it made up for the fact that their pitching wasn't great. Now, we're kind of seeing the reverse. We have an awesome pitching relay, but our batters are where the struggle is. And so Zono's like, we're supposed to be known for our batting. What? And so I like that Zono is able to recognize that and wants to improve upon that. I'm like, yes, please. So that was such a great meta moment with all of that. And then Miyuki talking to Miyuki talking to Mochi about the scores, about scoring, and then Haruichi and Kuromochi have this moment where they're talking about, it flashes back to Haruichi and Kuromochi talking about him like being a switch hitter. And he said that he wanted to be a switch hitter because it was cool. But then it cuts to Miyuki talking to Kuromochi about how we need to score. We need to put pressure and take pressure off of Sawamura and Furuya so they don't have to stress, and that we can help give them some more space to work with. And I like that Kuromochi says, it's not my job to be cool. My job is to score. And it's like, yes. It's like, I love that. Just putting the team above oneself, like being the best that you can be, but knowing what it takes for the team to do the best so they can put pressure off of the pitchers, so they can put pressure off of the fielders. Like, just, I love Kuromochi having that realization. It was great. And then Shirasu practicing in the dark. That was interesting. Our white laser, like, practicing in the dark. It reminded me of Aso practicing there. It's really cool. Sawamura using the tire run as a cool down. And he's used the same tire since first year. I'm like, it's going to be like such a tradition when Sawamura, if they do an Act 3 and Sawamura's a third year, if they show him passing the tire along to Asada or one of the other ones being like, this is your tire now. It's like, I love that he's used the same tire for a year and a half now. It's great. And then making the most of the situation. I love that Asada and Koshu are like, they're both looking at the tire like, can we be like Sawamura if we run with the tire? I was like, it's going to get to the point where it's Asada and Koshu running alongside Sawamura, and it's going to be adorable, but I love it. But Sawamura's like, I want to make the most of this opportunity and be in the best shape that I can be. So he's in a good place mentally so far. And then we cut, as Sawamura's in a good place, we cut to Furuya facing, he's like, my battle is against myself and I'm up against a wall. And that's exactly what it is. I'm glad Furuya becomes self-aware that he is his own worst enemy at this point. He is his own worst enemy, and he just needs to figure things out, step by step. But then he does that stupid thing where he hurts his shoulder. I'm like, Furuya. And he's just overexerting himself. The doctor's like, you're overexerting yourself and you're not using proper form. So you're going to mess something up. He's like, this is a warning. Get your form down proper. Massage every day. Keep yourself in strength, or you're going to... He's like, it's a good thing we caught it early because otherwise you'd be Chris 2.0. Right? You're going to be Chris 2.0 if you don't fix your form. This tension is a warning sign. He's like, take it seriously. And, oh my gosh, that it was just a strained muscle. It wasn't anything serious yet. Thank goodness. He just needs to not pitch for 2 weeks. Like, I hope that this is like a wake-up call that they all need to like help Furuya get back in gear. But yeah, I love that Miyuki and the other third years are waiting like on the road for them to come back with their baseball bats in hand, looking like they're gonna like just bust into the car and drag Furuya out. I love it. But Miyuki and them waiting, and that was really sweet that he's like, you're my partner, so I wanted to trust. That's the thing. We talk about trust with Miyuki and Sawamura, right? And Miyuki was saying, Miyuki's like, look, he's like, I wanted to trust that you had this under control. And I told Kuromochi that everything was fine. He's like, because I wanted to trust you. and I'm your partner, so I'm supposed to have trust in you. He's like, but it's really worrying me. Like Furuya's like, you're straining my trust because I'm not sure if I need to do something or if I can let you go with this. He's like, I don't know exactly what to do. And then Zono comes in and he's like, take it easy. Zono's like, hey, we got your back. Take it easy. We want you in your best form. Just do what you got to do and we'll be here for you. And that part where Kuromochi looks back and Miyuki's like stumbling there, it's like Miyuki's the captain, but Zono and Kuromochi are there to back him up. And Miyuki's not the best communicator. So when he can't communicate properly, that's when Zono comes in. He's like, no, we got this. You're good. Like, he's able to like come in and say what needs to be said. And Furuya is a simple creature. Furuya is simple. He needs things explained to him in simple terms. And sometimes I think Miyuki's a little too much for Furuya. So you need a character like Zono, who is also blunt and to the point, to come in and be like, nah, take it easy, Furuya. We gotcha. To like get through to him, right? But it's almost like Miyuki was like, you just said, Zono, what I couldn't say. What do we do? And then we cut to Sawamura and we book in this whole thing. Sawamura being like, you all right? Good. Because I'm not stopping. You need to get in top form so that we can... He's like, I love it because I love it. He's like, good. It's like such a bookend because they both did the good thing. Furuya was like, good. Now you can compete with me. And then Sawamura's like, good. I'm not stopping. So don't use this as an excuse. I love that Sawamura's like, I want to beat you at your best. Right? He's like, I don't want to wait for you. He's like, no, I'm going to become the ace. I want you at your best. I want to beat you at your best. You said you were going to compete against me. Let's do this. So get in shape, get back in top form. We're going to need you to win nationals. Let's do this. So I'm like, throw down the gauntlet. And it's that trust, right? That Miyuki was worried about his trust in Furuya wavering. Sawamura is like, no, I trust you'll be all right. So let's do this. Like, I love that Sawamura has that trust that Furuya is going to come back and be fine. And I want that. I don't want Sawamura to become the ace because of Furuya's injury alone. I don't want it to be a cop-out, right? I want it to be that it's because Sawamura was the better pitcher or the better ace, right? The one with more potential as the ace. That's what I want. But I've talked for over an hour. I've talked for over an hour about this, but oh my gosh, these episodes. So good. So good. I can't believe that with MIMA. I'm so excited. I'm elated by all of it. It's wonderful. These episodes, and we're at the halfway point now. We're over the halfway mark. So I don't know exactly what's going to happen next because the tournament's over, but it was May, so it's not summer yet. So maybe we'll do we've got that tournament, that invitational training camp Miyuki has to go to. If MIMA's there, oh my God. Okay, so we've got that training camp coming up, that invitational training camp with the American teams coming up. So Miyuki's going to have to go there. MIMA's probably going to be there. May's going to be there, I'm sure. I'm sure he's the Inashiro representative. So, oh my God. I just want May to be like, oh my God, there's MIMA. He's this world-class batter. He's like one of the best batters in Japan. And then MIMA like just sidesteps May and just shoves him aside and like goes to talk to Miyuki. And May's like, what? Like, that's all I want. That's all I want is for May to be like, I'm going to go impress this batter. And then he just completely ignores May and goes to talk to Miyuki. I need that so badly. That's all I want. That's all I want is for... And then Kosei to show up and be like, hey, you're Sato's catcher. Can you, like, get me Sawamura's number? Like, that's all I want. I just want Miyuki to be the most popular one there. And Kosei and MIMA are, like, all about it. And May's just like, what the hell? Like, that's all I need. That's all I need. I can't wait. But, yeah. So, I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction and discussion. It was amazing. I love these episodes as per Ace of the Diamond usual. So, yeah. Yep, this is a great set of episodes. Mm-hmm. So, I'm so curious to know your thoughts down below. Like I said, I want our boy Furuya to get some help. I want him to be at the top of his game, and I want Sawamura to beat him, become the ace. But I don't want Sawamura to do it. I don't want Sawamura to become the ace at the expense of Furuya suffering an injury or not being on the top of his game. That's what I don't want. So, I guess we'll see what happens, right? So, yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week. I'm going to watch episode 29 off screen and talk about it, but I'll talk about it alongside episodes 30, 31, and 32 of Ace of the Diamond.